the 7th episode of Stranger Things. Season 2 is titled The Lost Sister. The episode starts off with Eleven removing her blindfold after she had interacted with her mother, Terry Ives, in the void. Her aunt asks her what she saw, and Eleven tells her that Terry showed her another girl in the rainbow room, which was a bit different than her, referring to Kaylee, and she thinks that her mother wants her to find this girl. Becky brings out a file and tells Eleven that Terry kept a record of another girl who had gone missing. Eleven then turns on the TV to static, puts her blindfold on, and uses her powers to search for her, but it proves fruitless. However, she later succeeds in locating the girl and eagerly informs Becky, only to find her contacting the authorities. Feeling betrayed, Eleven takes some money from Becky's purse and flees. Eleven gets on a bus and arrives in Chicago, Illinois, where she finds Kaylee and her gang of misfits living in an abandoned warehouse underground in the city. Kaylee, also known as 8, possesses psychic abilities similar to Eleven's, and she has been using them to exact revenge on those who have wronged her. One of the guys in Kaylee's group, Axel, pulls a knife on Eleven, but Kaylee creates an illusion in his head, and he throws the knife away. Kaylee checks Eleven's arm and sees the 011 written on her arm. They share a heartwarming embrace, capturing a tender moment between them. Kaylee encourages Eleven to embrace her powers fully and join them in their quest for justice. Kaylee tells Eleven about her powers, which consist of making people see or not see things. She then shows her a beautiful butterfly illusion in her hand and tells her that it's not real and that she just made her mind think it was real. Meanwhile, Kaylee introduces Eleven to her group, ensuring a proper introduction this time. Among them are Axel, Dottie, and Mick, who serves as the group's vigilant protector alongside Funshine, a robust figure. Kaylee explains to Eleven that they are all outcasts and misfits, rejected by society, and united in seeking retribution against those who have wronged them in the past. As Eleven spends time with Kaylee and her group, she begins to experiment with her abilities in new ways. Under Kaylee's guidance, Eleven learns to harness her anger, channeling it into her telekinetic powers, unlocking newfound levels of strength and control. As Eleven successfully moves an entire bus with her telekinesis, Kaylee and the group cheer her on. Kaylee reminds Eleven of the lies she's endured throughout her life, urging her to tap into her inner anger. Kaylee shows Eleven a board with pictures of bad men on it. Kaylee asks Eleven if she knows any of them, and she points to a guy named Ray who she had seen hurt her mother. Eleven uses her powers to find his location, and the group gets in their van to go find him. Eleven uses her powers to see Ray watching television alone in his living room, and the group barges in. Eleven and Kaylee attack him and beat him to within an inch of his life. As Eleven continues to grapple with her conflicting emotions, she is faced with a pivotal decision. Kaylee presents her with the opportunity to seek revenge on Ray, one of the men responsible for their shared trauma. In a tense confrontation, Eleven confronts the ghost of her past and ultimately chooses to spare his life, realizing that Ray had daughters as well after seeing a photograph. The group then flees, as Ray's daughters, who were in another room, had called the cops, and they were at the front door. At the warehouse, Eleven is sitting alone, sulking in a room. Kaylee comes in and asks for her permission to sit down. She gets into Eleven's head and makes her see an illusion of Dr. Brenner, who tells her that she has a wound inside that is festering and that she needs to get rid of it through revenge. Eleven screams and tells Kaylee to get out of her head. Kaylee then presents Eleven with a stark choice. Either she can return to her policeman, or remain with the group to seek vengeance for her mother's suffering, and undergo healing alongside Kaylee. Throughout the episode, Eleven wrestles with conflicting emotions surrounding her past and her bond with her friends back in Hawkins. On one hand, she grapples with a burning desire for revenge against those who inflicted pain upon her, especially Dr. Brenner. Yet, simultaneously, she experiences a profound yearning to reunite with her friends and recapture the sense of belonging she had discovered with them. Longing for her friends, Eleven closes her eyes and utilizes her powers to check in on them. In her vision, she witnesses Hopper mentioning the graveyard where he was buried. Additionally, she sees Mike urgently warning, "It's a trap," prompting Eleven to realize that her friends are in jeopardy back in Hawkins. Simultaneously, the warehouse is swarmed by the police, sending the group into a frantic scramble. Kaylee swiftly employs her powers to craft an illusion of an empty room, facilitating the group's escape. As they pile into the van, Kaylee urges Eleven to join them, but Eleven, resolved in her decision, bids a bittersweet farewell to Kaylee and her comrades, recognizing that her true place is alongside her friends in Hawkins. As she boards a bus back home, she reflects on her journey of self-discovery and the realization that true strength comes from within. A kind woman, noticing that she's a little kid traveling alone, asks to sit with Eleven. She asks Eleven where she's headed, to which Eleven replies, "I'm going to my friends! I'm going home!" This concludes Teehee's 7th episode of Stranger Things Season 2. The 8th episode of Stranger Things Season 2 is titled The Mind Flayer's Gambit. The episode begins with a horde of Demodogs emerging from the entrance to the Upside Down, launching a relentless assault on the Hawkins lab. As chaos ensues, the Demodogs wreak havoc on the facility and its personnel, resulting in numerous casualties. Mike tells Joyce they need to put Will down, as he's under the influence of the Mind Flayer and spying for him. Joyce, reluctant at first, decides to inject him and make him unconscious after she asks Will who she is, and Will hesitates to call her his mother, realizing that his mind is in control of the Mind Flayer. At Billy and Max's home, Billy's father confronts him about Max's whereabouts, abruptly interrupting Billy's preparations for a date. When Billy says he has no knowledge of Max's whereabouts and that she is not his sister, his father strikes him and demands that he cancel his plans and orders him to go find Max. Meanwhile, in the woods, Max, joined by Lucas, Dustin, and Steve, are startled by piercing screeches echoing from the direction of Hawkins' lab. Intrigued, they head towards the lab, only to discover Jonathan and Nancy already at the outer gate, lured by the ominous sounds. At the lab, Dr. Owens tells Joyce and Hopper that they're trapped there as all the doors in the lab have a fail secure feature, which means that they have to manually override the locks from a computer in the basement, which is 3 floors down. As Hopper gears up to go down to the basement, Bob stops him and tells him that he needs to have a good understanding of BASIC, a programming language, to be able to successfully override the codes to open the doors. Despite Hopper's request for a crash course in BASIC, Bob regrets his inability to teach him and volunteers to venture into the basement himself. Hopper equips Bob with a gun, briefs him on its use, and hands him a walkie-talkie before Bob begins his descent into the depths of the lab. Bob successfully reaches the basement and is able to turn the lights back on. Using his programming skills, he manages to unlock the lab's gates as well. Dr. Owens and the rest of the group observe Bob's progress via the surveillance cameras and alert him to the presence of company in the west stairwell. Bob devises a plan and activates the sprinklers in the hallway to draw the creature away, successfully diverting its attention. Meanwhile, Dr. Owens opts to remain behind and urges Hopper and the others to evacuate, promising to communicate via the comms if any further issues arise. As Bob ascends, he's suddenly ambushed by a Demodog. Despite his attempts to flee, another Demodog bursts through a nearby door, attacking him from another angle. Hopper springs into action, firing at the Demodog and rushing to aid Bob. However, the situation escalates rapidly as numerous other Demodogs converge on the scene, forcing Hopper to take charge. With Joyce distraught and overwhelmed, Hopper guides her out of the lab. Soon after, Jonathan and Nancy arrive in their car. Hopper swiftly ensures the safety of Joyce and Will, ushering them into Jonathan and Nancy's vehicle. With the remaining kids, Hopper speeds away in his police car. Tragically, Bob meets his demise as the Demodogs overwhelm him, leaving everyone in a state of grief and mourning. In the aftermath of the Demodog attack on Hawkins' lab, everyone gathers at the Byers household, seeking solace and safety. Joyce, Hopper, Mike, Will, and the others reunite at the Byers house, visibly shaken by the harrowing events. Will, still under the influence of the Mind Flayer, experiences excruciating pain as the creature asserts its control over him. Mike tries to explain everything to the group, which makes Dustin realize that the closest analogy to the shadow monster is the Mind Flayer, a malevolent force that likes to control minds and is bent on conquering everything and everyone. Joyce emphatically says that she wants to kill it, but Hopper raises the question of how can they kill if they know nothing about it. Mike then comes up with the idea that if anyone knows how to kill the Mind Flayer, it's Will. And if they can put him somewhere he doesn't know or recognize, then he can't spy for the Mind Flayer and maybe help them instead. They collectively agree that the shed behind the house is the optimal location for their plan. With determination, they commence clearing out the shed, swiftly making it ready for their purpose. Hopper leads Will into the shed, illuminating his face with a bright light before securing him to a chair. As Will regains consciousness, disoriented and bewildered, he frantically questions his surroundings and the reason for being restrained. He suddenly starts screaming and shouting, "Let me go!" repeatedly, until he eventually falls silent. In an effort to reach Will, everyone pitches in, sharing cherished memories they've shared with him. Joyce fondly recalls a birthday where she gifted him a box of crayons, watching him create something truly beautiful with each one. Mike shares a touching moment from their past when he saw Will swinging alone and reached out to befriend him. These heartfelt recollections are shared in the hope that they will resonate with Will. Joyce, with a mix of hope and desperation, implores Will to respond if he can hear them. As Will repeats his plea to be released, he begins tapping his fingers on the chair. Hopper, observant as ever, recognizes this as Morse code, an indication that Will is attempting to communicate. They all rally around him, sharing cherished memories in an attempt to keep him engaged. Through Morse code, Will spells out the urgent message, "Close gate." Their focus is interrupted by the sudden ringing of the phone, alerting Will to their location. Panic sets in as they realize the danger they're in. The Mind Flayer has sent demodogs after them. Hastily, they gather in the living room, bracing themselves as the sounds of demodogs grow louder outside. Just as the demodogs are about to attack, they're startled by strange noises. Then, unexpectedly, a dead demodog is hurled through the window. In the nick of time, 11 bursts onto the scene, having vanquished the demodogs outside and saved the day. And this concludes the 8th episode of Stranger Things Season 2. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to comment, hit the like button, and subscribe.